All right, Greg, here is a question from Joy. What would you say to a cousin of mine who said he was more likely to believe in multiple gods than just one? He said this was because if there were good and bad gods, sometimes the evil ones would win, causing the evil in the world. He felt that made more sense than one God allowing the evil.
Well, part of the difficulty here is that, and I'm not sure if this is going to make how this would translate into a conversation, okay? But part of the difficulty is that there's some philosophical necessity to having a maximally great God, okay? Because that separates the one God who's responsible for creating everything, okay, from all the others that are limited and finite and created gods. And this is the case with when you look at these different pantheons. These are all finite gods that actually, by most standards, are really immoral in many of the things that they do. And where the God of the Bible is of the God of strict monotheism is a God that is maximally great. And part of that entails aseity. That means he is the ground of existence. There never was when he didn't exist, nor will there be when he does not exist. So he's eternal in that way. If you don't have that, what you're left with, I think, is just a pantheon of gods of fighting with each other. Now, if this young man or this person thinks that this is a superior explanation to Christianity because it gives an accounting for the problem of evil, the two thoughts come to mind immediately. What then becomes their standard of goodness by which they can distinguish good from evil? Now, maybe I should word that differently. What then becomes their grounding? How did I put it? The grounding for morality that doesn't help them to distinguish, but it allows a distinction to be made. So I'm just shifting from the epistemological, which is the way I put it first, to the ontological, the existence of morality, not how we know it. Okay? So if there's good and evil, what is it? What standard makes sense of that? Is there one God that turns out to be absolutely perfectly holy that becomes the standard for others? Or is there a God that just turns out to be holy because he fulfills a different standard, an external standard? Now, that's a problem. It's called Euthyphros' dilemma or Euthyphros' dilemma that Socrates dealt with. But it is a problem if you have this multiplicity of gods that are kind of characterized, some good and some bad. Where's the standard coming from? If it's coming from outside of them, then you have to ask, well, what is the basis for that standard? Why are we obliged to this standard? And obligation is a foundational part of morality. So that's one difficulty of the having all this multiplicity of gods that you can distinguish good from evil with. Oh, these are good and these are bad. Well, where is the standard? Okay, that's one problem. The second problem is we've already solved that problem that he thinks he's solving with having good and bad gods, because we have good and bad beings on this earth that account for the problem of evil. We have a good God creating a good world with good human beings they are morally innocent, good in that sense, but they are mutable. In other words, they could do bad things, which they did, and then brought evil into the world and caused the world to be broken. So it isn't like our way of looking at it lacks a way of explaining the way the world really is. Well, here's how we can explain good and evil. We got good gods and bad gods. Okay, well, I guess that's a reason. That's an explanation. I don't know, and that solves one problem for you, but it raises other difficulties. And why do you need to solve a problem that Christianity already solves in a way that actually comports aggressively with our common intuitions about the world. We know we're fallen, and we know other people are fallen, and everybody knows the world is broken. And we have a standard for goodness in a God who is not broken, who is not fallen, but is not keeping some external standard of goodness to accomplish his holiness, but who is in himself morally perfect, and he becomes the standard for goodness. That's a better solution if what you're looking for is a way of explaining, what we find in the world.
Mm-hmm. I think you've hit on the biggest problem here, Greg, and that's his solution saws off the branch he wants to sit on.
Yeah.
Because you do have to have a self-existent, perfectly moral being as the grounding for the standard of good and evil. If you just have all the gods doing whatever they want, you just have gods doing whatever they want.
Right.
There's no standard. There's nothing they're beholden to. That doesn't make sense of evil at all. Mm-hmm. So it not only doesn't answer well, it just gets rid of evil. And so that's not a good answer.
Incidentally, that's is my understanding is that's how these people saw these pantheons. They didn't assess these gods in terms of goodness or badness. They were just there, and they did what they did. And what we had to do was find ways to manipulate those gods through sacrifice so that we could get what we want. And this was worship to Baal, worship to the Ashtoreth. These were storm god and agricultural gods. And so if you do the right things for them, then you're going to get stuff. You're going to get a good harvest. And the issue of the morality of these gods doesn't seem at all to have entered into the discussion for them.
Plus, limited beings can't be self-existent. So you can't have a pantheon of limited self-existent beings. That's not a possibility. So what you end up with is chaos. So how do you explain a world of order and mathematics and that's discoverable? This is why science arose in the West, because people believed in the self-existent, orderly, rational God who had created everything. Whereas in the ancient world, there was no order to be found. There was the chaos of the pantheon of gods. So he's creating a whole lot of problems that he's not going to want to accept with this answer. And so I think, Joy, if you just help him to understand the implications of what he's saying, say, well, maybe you could think about some difficulties with that, and then maybe the answers for the problem of evil are better with Christianity, and we can talk about those a little more. And we've talked about those a lot on this show.
Yeah.
So we're not going to go into that right now, but you can certainly go back and look at all of the times we've talked about evil, because evil is a big topic. This is the one topic that touches everybody. Everybody is going to be interested in this topic because they have to deal with it. And they also think that it's a hole-in-one against Christianity.
Yeah.
So it's a good topic to bring up, and people will have a lot of opinions, but maybe that's a direction you can go in, Joy.
In the Street Smarts book, there's a chapter titled Evil, Atheist's Fatal Flaw. Atheism's fatal flaw, rather. And it's not a good argument against theism. It turns out to be a good argument against atheism.